Hi, and thank you for attending this event sponsored by the New England chapter of the Society of Professional Journalists. I also want to give a special thank you to everyone attending live from the SPJ National Convention in Las Vegas tonight. My name is Stella Lawrence, and I'm here tonight with David Andelman, who is joining us for the second week in a row. Last week, David shared some insight from his extensive career as a foreign correspondent, traveling through and reporting from 86 countries, or did we say 87? Might have been 87.
It's actually 89 because we added
89.
three extra from Cyprus alone.
That's right. Okay, 89. Up to 89 now. He also shared stories from his days at the New York Times, CBS News, and CNBC, among others. Tonight, David is returning to share some tips and tricks for using Substack, that is the digital newsletter platform. David began his Substack, Andelman Unleashed, about a year ago and now has over 1,200 subscribers. So without further ado, I will turn it over to David.
Well, greetings, everybody who may be watching, listening, or phoning in. It's a great pleasure to be with the SPJ New England chapter. New England, of course, is my home area, having been born in Cambridge and grew up in Newton, and coming up on my 60th anniversary from Newton High School, my 60th anniversary celebration. So at any rate, Substack is something that I stumbled on. And I stumbled on it partly because basically I got removed from Twitter by Elon Musk. For some reason, he had it in for me, and he said, that's it, I'm gone. So my Twitter page went away, and I needed some other avenue for expression. And I was also, at the same time, I was particularly excited about the French elections. And I'm a great Francophile. I'm a member of the French Légion d'honneur. I'm a chevalier, which is a knight, which was awarded to me by Emmanuel Macron, the president of France. And so I've been fascinated by the French electoral system. And a year ago, January, the French presidential elections came around for the second round. He was 5 years in office and coming up for a second round of election. And I thought it would be really fascinating because nobody was really focusing on a week-by-week basis what was happening in that extraordinary campaign last year. So I began a weekly Substack on the election campaign. Well, about a month or so into that, I began to realize there are a lot of other elections going on every year all over the world. And I was very interested in all of them. And many of them were being ignored. Some of them were very big elections, like Germany or France or Italy particularly. Some of them very tiny little islands in the Pacific or, off the coast of Africa, all of whom having elections that were very important to their people and in many respects very important to the world. So I began commenting and writing and chronicling every election that happened anywhere in the world. And that was the real origins of Andelman Unleashed. It was unleashed. Well, that's fine. But again, there are maybe 30 or 40 elections like that. There's all the rest of the time to fill in. And, Substack kind of grows on you, as we'll explore when I get to my slideshow in a minute. I really wanted something else that I could carry on from week to week. So I hit on the idea that nobody else was really looking at the media around the world outside of America and how they were viewing America, what they were reporting on in many languages all over the world. And at the same time, how they were viewing other countries, either neighbors or far away, how they were reporting on it. So what was, for instance, the Singapore newspaper saying about China, or what was a newspaper in Nigeria saying about America, or what was a newspaper in some of the French African territories saying about France, and so on. So I began following that, and each week I did something called The World This Week, in which I talked about how the world is viewing America and how the world is viewing the world. And I arranged an agreement with the extraordinary organization called Cartooning for Peace, which is a network of almost 300 cartoonists around the world, who actually each week they produce different kinds of cartoons for their own newspapers and are joined together in this network. And I choose a very compelling cartoon from some newspaper all over the world, sometimes in foreign languages, which I translate. And I run that every week as well in The World This Week. So it's become kind of a mini media enterprise, shall we say. And that's when I want to begin, because I think that a lot of people could really take advantage of Substack and all of its really amazing technology that is developed, and its amazing clientele, its amazing readers and followers and so on, that could be very useful for people. So why don't we start? And I'm going to put up my slideshow, which I created just today for SPJ New England. see, how am I doing this? Are you seeing it?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, now I want to make it so that you can see just the slideshow. Let me work on that a little bit. View. There we go. Okay, so Andelman Unleashed, that's what I called it. And it's a Substack tale, I say. So let's start right in. First thing I want to talk about really is, if I get the next slide going, there we go. The creation. Creation is critical to really launching a compelling Substack page. You have to have a theme. And as I talked about in the beginning, my theme was originally elections, French elections, and then elections broader, and then the world, and so on. It should be concise. It should be compelling. You know, there's a thing in the movie industry, television industry, that you should have an elevator pitch. So if you get, for instance, if you happen to get into the elevator with the president of Columbia Pictures, and you have a terrific movie you want to talk about, you only have 30 seconds until he gets to his floor to tell him what this is all about. You should be able to tell what you're going to be writing about concisely, in a compelling manner that will really say to people, that's amazing. It's an amazing idea. It's different. And you have to research this carefully, which I did. You have to research the competition. There really is no competition. Nobody else is really reporting on every election that happens everywhere in the world. In fact, so much so that I do write a regular column for CNN Opinion. At the end of the year last year, I did a column just on all the elections that happened last year and what they had in common and what they were different and how they changed the world in so many ways. So it really has to, you have to look at this, you have to look at that, and you have to look at the sustainability. So when I say sustainability, I mean, can you continue this for a year, for 2 years, for 5 years? Can you sustain this week in and week out? Because that is vitally important. You have to sustain the same level of excitement and interest. And I'm up to week 59 on the week this week. Every week is something new and exciting and different. And I get reactions from my readers all over the world. I have readers now on 5 continents, which we'll get to. And I get reactions from them saying, wow, I didn't know that, or that's fabulous. You can point that out. So you find your niche, and then you have to say to yourself, are you moved? Does this move you? Does this excite you? Does this get you up in the morning and say, oh, I can't wait to get to work on this? Because I'll tell you something, be very careful. Substack can consume your life. It really can in so many ways. So anyway, you have to be moved. This was my very first Substack page. That's just the front part that appears on Substack's homepage, homepage. When you click on it, you get a whole big presentation, of course. So Quagmire in France, I call it, and that's what it really is beginning to look like. So you have to have you should have a little catchy phrase at the very top to really, that was my debut theme, and so on, and that was the elections. So then the other thing when creating it, think about the audience. You have to think very carefully about your audience. Who do you want to reach? Do you want to reach a particular geographical region? Do you have a theme? Is it a demographic? Who's the demography of your audience? Think very carefully about that. When I started off, I wanted to reach interesting people in America, because I think the United States really is clueless about what's going on in many other parts of the world. It turned out, however, that I now literally have readers on 5 continents, virtually every continent except, well, Antarctica. I don't think I have a reader there yet. I'm trying to find someone. If you have someone in Antarctica who might be interested, Andelman Unleashed, that'll be just delight me. So you think about all that, the geography of your readership, the themes that would interest them, and their demography. Who are they? What is their common denominator? What's the common denominator of your reader? Know your reader. That's so very important. And I think so many news media just kind of lose sight of that. And that's one of the problems. With a lot of local newspapers are failing. Sorry. We have a local news person on here. but they're not failing. They can be very vibrant if they know their audience. They have to, so you have to know your reader, and you will grow more and more to understand that reader as you really, as they react to what you've been writing, as you find out who is actually signing up for it and who is retiring from it, because that will happen also. So be prepared to modify your view, to expand your view, to contract it, things that aren't really working. And Substack gives you some really extraordinary metrics that you can watch. Who's opening it, how many people are opening it, what kinds of things are being opened, and so on. And from where, because they'll give you a map that shows geographically where you are being read and who's opening your pages. So that's very exciting. The timing. When do you put one out? When do you put a piece out? When do you put your next edition out? Daily newspaper, it goes out every morning. Television news show goes on at 6:30 at night if it's a network news show, or goes on at 9 o'clock if it's Rachel Maddow or what have you. Or if it's Fox, it's kind of in your head all the time. But anyway, don't so two things. Don't overwhelm your audience. So don't say, I'm going to put out 6 things a day and people are going to just be excited about all of them. They won't be. And they'll get so overwhelmed. Very often they'll just say, I don't want to hear from this guy anymore, and resign. So that's very scary. On the other hand, if you let too long go by, I really think like a minimum of once a week is necessary. I generally try to hit them twice a week, but don't let them forget you. So don't let them say, gee, I wonder whatever happened to Andelman. I haven't heard from him. Oh, I don't need him anymore. He's gone. The day of the week. My week that was goes out every weekend. Sometimes it's a Saturday, sometimes it's a Sunday. It depends. So a lot of the world's elections are held on the weekends, on a Saturday or a Sunday. So that will depend some of the things that actually I put out. But most people can count on by the fact that if they haven't heard from me by Sunday night, they're probably not going to. But I'm very deliberate on that. I respect deadlines, and as a longtime network news person and a national newspaper person, I'm conscious about deadlines. The time of day, I happen to think that early in the morning is a time to hit people, and sometimes I will actually finish something at the very end of a day, and I'll set it for publication like at 5 or 6 o'clock the next morning, so it's right there in people's mailboxes when they get up in the morning. I think that people really like to see something like that early in the day to read. Some people think that later at night is good because people can read it before they go to bed. I think they watch television before they go to bed, but that's just my own personal household. So, but choose a time of day that you think works for you. And again, if you watch the metrics, you'll be able to tell how many people are opening it and where. You have to create a bio. That's one of the requisites when you sign up. You create a bio that that if someone looks at it, they can tell who you are. Sell yourself. This is your one chance to shine. What is truly unique about yourself? Really tell people that, what distinguishes you from every other voice out there. And, there are hundreds of thousands of people now doing Substack. It's very scary in some respects. And some Substack pages have, like 10 readers or what have you, 100 or 50 or something, just, friends and family. But if you have something that there is something that is unique about yourself that can sell it. Sell yourself, sell what you're writing about, your background, what have you. Make sure because if you don't sell yourself, nobody else is going to, trust me. All right. So now you've sold yourself, you've chosen your niche, you're ready to go. It's time for your first page. This was my launch page. Welcome to Substack. We are creating this coming soon post for you to edit, to click the 3-dot icon. It's just a placeholder. And we will eventually appear yesterday, today, and tomorrow. That's how I positioned it originally. And they have a form. Substack is very good with forms. They'll set up everything, just about everything for you. You just have to supply the words that go inside that and think very carefully about that. You can change them. Anything is editable in Substack. Those little 3 dots you see right at the end of the that when you open that up, it gives you all sorts of options what you can do with it. But make sure you do, in fact, do something important with it. So, sorry. All right. the launch page. Now you have to design your page. Your page is your home page, basically, is your window on the world. This is the first time people will be seeing it. It's your vision, the first vision of your vision of the world. Now, there are all sorts of ways of setting this up. And Substack has created these sort of templates that will allow you to choose the kind of way you want to be envisioned. Now, I'm a kind of a person who believes in like sort of magazine style of journalism. And I worked for Forbes, I worked for other magazines. I'm a judge of the National Magazine Awards every year. I chose kind of a magazine type homepage format like this. So this big thing in the center, the big picture in the center, that's what I just published. That's the last thing I published this week. Before that are other things. For instance, I have here unleashed comment. That's a new feature I had. Oops, sorry. Get back to the right slide. Okay. And I have other features like so basically they go from here, it goes to that, it goes to the top left column, then the bottom left column, and then it goes off into the archives down below. But people can always search for it. And some people are really compelled by the archives. The archives become a very valuable thing for you because it's really how people can see how you're evolving, how you're developing, how you're showing off all you can offer. And this is the place to show off all you can offer. The other thing I'll tell you right now is that for a long time, this picture, the main picture that appears on the homepage, that was always the first image in the story. So you had to be very careful what the first image you showed was, because that was the image that's going to show up there. They now have the ability on Substack to choose a different image, but I've gotten into that habit of having that as the lead image, and I think it kind of sets off the. It helps you think about how your page that day is going to be organized or that week. Okay. There's another kind of Substack. You can just do a list, and you can just simply have, as this person does, these are the design no-nos, I call them. Just a list of every story, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way, no pictures, no images, just text all the way down. If you have a very big name and people really, really, really want to read what you have to write, I guess you don't really have to display it very much. But, why gamble that someone is going to say, ooh, I just have to read this piece by so-and-so every week? Because you have a way of setting it off that makes it really look much more compelling than that. So, this long stretches of text I kind of hate. I hate long stretches of uninterrupted text because I think readers just don't have patience for it. I mean, with television and TikTok and everything else coming along now, people want to see visual images. They want things to jump out at them and grab them. And that's what you want to do. You want to be able to grab someone as soon as they come to your page and say, "That's boy, what else does he have down below?" Now, the logo. You have to have a logo. You don't have to have a logo. I mean, that last one didn't have a logo, but I thought it'd be fun to have a logo. So I have, my wife had a friend who's a designer, and she was a very original designer. So I said, here's what I want to do. I want to be unleashed. So he created me a simple logo like this with my initial, Andelman, and then the U, unleashed. As you can see, it has a little hook at the end, and that's a whole long, rope all the way around, all the way to a leash at the other end. So it's kind of fun. I thought it was fun and funky, so I stretched it on out like that. And that is now my banner that appears on the top of every one of my pieces as I go out on the internet. And that's really kind of fun. It really says a lot about who you are and what this is about. Your page. When I talk about your page, I mean the page that you're actually developing each week that we'll send out. Make it pop. Really make it exciting. I use lots of photos, lots of charts and graphs. And I really spend a lot of time looking. I probably spend as much time looking for interesting photos as I do actually writing the pieces. I think that's really essential. You really have to have something that really excites people. And now you can begin experimenting with video and audio. Substack has just enabled that. I have started to use some video pieces every now and then. Audio, you can drop into the pieces. I tend to stay away from a lot of hyperlinks off the page. this was my old Forbes training. I was executive editor at Forbes.com for several years, and we had a horror. Bloomberg has the same thing. We had a horror of sending people out of Forbes or off of the page to some other page. Like, why give them why give them the airtime out? Because sometimes they just won't bother coming back. They'll get so interested in the other hyperlink stuff. So I try to keep hyperlinks to a minimum. Anyway, have a look at what I've done. That's my URL for the Andelman Substack. That's what most Substack URLs look like, by the way. Now, building the audience. Where do you start? Well, obviously you start with friends and family. And that has caused some discussion in my family because not all of my family initially actually subscribe. But I tell them, if you don't subscribe, that's it. I don't come to the Thanksgiving dinner anymore. You won't see me at Hanukkah. Forget the presents at Easter, at Christmas, and whatever. You're off my list. So most of them now subscribed. Beyond friends and family becomes more of a that's where the heavy lifting comes in. Now, one thing that I did years ago, and I advise young people especially to start doing, because I started this 20 years ago, an electronic Rolodex. I happen to keep mine in a thing called Benchmark, or there's another thing called Constant Contact or whatever. They do blast emails, but they also are a great repository for emails. And so I built up an email list now that is somewhere in the neighborhood of about 27,000 emails from all over the world, all kinds of people, interesting people. I mean, perfectly honest, I have Tony Blinken's private email, and I actually used it a while ago to help someone, and it was a huge success, this adventure. But it will also enable you, and frankly, I have not pinged my entire email list about subscribing to Andelman Unleashed. I wanted to do that. You'll see when in a little while, but I've been very circumspect about using the broad list because people can get very sensitive about being deluged by emails from things that they don't understand or aren't interested in. So be careful about that, but start building that list. And I put something on it virtually every day. Someone sends me an email, pushing some product or whatever. That person's email goes on my electronic Rolodex. And so, be very, be very, don't be so careful, be very daring what you put on your email, your e-Rolodex, but make sure it keeps growing and growing and growing because it will be eventually a huge asset to you in almost every place you go. Then there's also social media, of course. Now, I have to tell you that my Substack page is actually, in terms of readership, is pretty small. There are Substack pages out there that are upwards of 200,000, 500,000 readers. Now, a lot of these are people who have brought a tremendous audience with them, usually from social media, or they're big television personalities, or they're, what have you. And there's no doubt that there's some big money to be made from that. We'll get to that next. But the idea is you have to put yourself out there and push your Substack page wherever you go. So write for, every time you write something to you contribute to something, make sure that the bio box has a hyperlink to your Substack page in it. If you're a guest on a podcast or a television or a radio program, I go very often on the POTUS channel on Sirius satellite radio. And there are several presenters here who have me on fairly often. And they always say, Andelman has this great Substack page, Andelman Unleashed, be sure you read it. I get, 15, 20, 30 new subscribers from something like that. And that really begins to add up. The other thing I did, which is kind of fun, and I don't know anybody else has done that actually, I created a QR code that takes you back to the Substack page. And I put it on the back of my business card. The big secret is Vistaprint will create the QR code for you if you give them the email, the URL. So I did that, and that's been great. You hand it out to someone and say, "Oh, by the way, you should subscribe to Andelman Unleashed. It's free." And a lot of people, some people have actually sat right down there, pulled out their phone and subscribed. It's terrific. Anyway, it helps build the audience. The other thing that's very good is Substack Notes. Now, Substack Notes is it's basically their Substack's answer to Twitter or Instagram or what have you. And as I mentioned, I think I am not welcome at Twitter anymore. So okay, sayonara X. I've been X'd. That's fine. But I now have Substack Notes, and I am on there all the time, putting things on there. And you can do things you can never do at Twitter. First of all, you're not restricted to whatever it is, 175 characters or whatever. You can ramble on a bit. Don't ramble on too much, because people do still have finite attention span, shall we say. So but use Substack Notes, and it's great. You can meet other Substackers. There are thousands of interesting Substackers out there, and that's where you meet them. And it's really terrific fun. Now, inevitably, you're going to get some unsubscribes. They call it disabled. Such and such has disabled themselves from you. I think that's a very funny way of putting it. But at first, I used to get really upset about that, because I said, it's free. Why would you disable? It's free. But some people say, oh, I just get too much stuff in, and I can't. I do it once a week. Come on, how much get? Maybe 50 a year. But at any rate, I write to as many as I possibly can and ask them why, what would win them back, what have I done wrong, what would you like me to see me do differently? And I have won people back that way. And very often they just ignore me completely. If you go, God, not another thing from this guy, please help me, God help me. But that's so it's going to happen. Just count on it. It's certainly. And now, where's the money? I bet that's what you've all been asking for. That is the central issue. Substack, that is how Substack survives. There is no advertising on Substack. They take, I think it's 10%, might be 15%. I think it's 10% of whatever you bring in. And they take it for themselves, which is fair. We get to keep 90%. That's fine. Now, unpaid, which is what I am right now, that helps you build a list. Unless you can launch it with immediately a big list from people you brought over from your previous gigs. Paid will get you money, but, it can also drive away potential audiences. And at this point, I really love the idea of more people reading what I write and less about the money I'm going to make. But that's going to change. I vow it's going to change. I vowed, actually, I started from zero, and I had friends and family, and then I began expanding from there. And I decided when I hit 1,000, I'd offer paid tiers. Paid tier is a part that's gone behind a paywall, basically. So sometimes some Substackers, they put everything behind a paid tier. So they'll give you like 4 or 5 paragraphs at the top, and they'll say, you want to read the rest of it? You got to subscribe. And I think that's kind of nasty and cheap. And maybe if you're really, really a big name, and they'll get some people to do that. But I think they're cutting back on their audience a lot that way. And I like to have an audience. I like people to read and see what I'm talking about. So I'm way past 1,000 by now, and I still haven't gone paid. But one of the main reasons is I want to build lures that will lure people to go paid. So I have some other features that I'm working on right now that I hope to be able to debut by the end of October. And when these develop, I think they're going to be quite compelling. People really will want to pay to read them. That's really important, because what you can give to your paid audience to attract and especially retain them is very important. So here's what I've done. Here's what I have so far. I have The World This Week. I have Unleashed Voices, which is basically either people commenting on stuff that they think is important or interesting voices, or their Q&As with interesting, compelling people. I have a thing called Unleashed Books. It's generally books that have not come to people's real attention yet that I think should. Very often his books in like French, which is my other main language, that have not been translated into English. And that so what I do is I'll do a little review of the book, and then I'll do a Q&A, which I transcribe and edit, and that goes on as well. And that's a feature from Unleashed Books. And then I have Unleashed Commentary. Unleashed Commentary, I've really only done one so far, and it was fun. It went out about 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago. I discovered the Harvard had done a what I think it was an abomination. They had taken $2 million from a corrupt Filipino politician who was the Speaker of the Filipino House of Representatives in Manila, and they'd taken $2 million from him to put his name on a preceptorship at Harvard for the Tagalog language. I don't think that this was tainted money. There's no question about it. He's been accused of bribery and convicted of bribery in Manila. He's a niece of Ferdinand and Imelda Marcos. He's the first cousin of Bongbong Marcos, who's the current president of the Philippines. And this is not seemly of Harvard to do. So I did a big commentary on it. This commentary was turned down by the Boston Globe. It was turned down by the Harvard Crimson. And I wrote it with in conjunction with a professor from Harvard Kennedy School, who is an extraordinary figure. He is starting he's working on launching a international court of corruption. So if there's anybody who is an authority on this subject, it's him. So what happened was we didn't get any of those two places to run it. So we got the Manila Times to run it in the Philippines, which was fun. They gave it a big display. And then I said, I want the rest of the world to see this. So I put it on a new feature called Unleashed Commentary. And I'm going to do that from now on. And particularly, that's another thing I should tell you about. The other reason I started Substack was I come up with ideas, probably anywhere between 6 and 8, 10 ideas a month for CNN and for some other places for commentaries. I write generally, 3 to 4 pieces for CNN. I write for other magazines like American Purpose and so on. But there are inevitably ideas of mine that just fall by the wayside and nobody really seems to want. So I wanted another avenue for them. And that is what I think Substack can really do for you, even though you're writing for other places, and you should, because they will give you the kind of visibility you can bring back to Substack. That will also, basically, Substack readers will be able to see some of the thoughts I have that nobody else will be able to see. What's next? I have all kinds of other interesting pages for behind my paywall, and all I'm going to tell you now is stand by, because I want you to buy it. All right, how much? Pricing levels. Substack basically offers 3 kinds of pricing. There is monthly pricing. The starting level tends to be like $5 a month. The sky's the limit, though. The highest I've seen and that I've actually subscribed to is $25 a month. I think that is gargantuanly more than most people I know, even my friends and family, will pay to read me every month. So I've stayed away from anything approaching that. But for instance, Dave Calloway, who's the former editor-in-chief of USA Today, who's a great friend, we were both at Bloomberg together many years ago. He has started it's actually an environmental Substack page, which is really quite compelling, and has become really the gold standard in many respects of environmental reporting. And he's charging $25 a month. I paid it because he's a great friend. I think a lot of other people are paying it simply because they really need to read what he has to say. Then there's a yearly, generally it's a 20% or so discount from 12 times a month. So a $5 a month subscription by the year would be, say, $50. And people do $6 a month. They'll do $7, $8 a month, and so on. I think if I start, I'll probably do either $5 or $6 a month, and then either $50 or $60 a year. And finally, there is a big thing called like founding member, or you can generally choose one or two other names for it. Founding member sounds kind of neat. That's usually 3 digits, like $150, $200, $250. It's big bucks, but it's a big commitment. Some people will do it for a year just to see, get you started or whatever. Some people will do it regularly every year, and that's really exciting. So what should you expect from paid versus unpaid. Well, the general experience of Substack is that about 20% of the unpaid as paid may be the ceiling. So say you have 2,000 subscribers, you could probably you might figure on having anywhere from 200 to 400 paid. That can still be a fair bit of change. I mean, it's not obviously something you can, probably live on unless you're living under a bridge somewhere, but it's certainly a nice little extra piece of change in your pocket. And that's kind of what I probably would aim for initially. And then hopefully you'll build from there. So there we are. Now, I am always delighted to chat or schmooze. Here is how you reach me, D.A. Andelman, DAANDELMAN @gmail.com. Of course, as always, Andelman Unleashed. Spread the word. As you can see, it's right up there in boldface, big word, big letters. That's what you should do wherever you go. Tell everybody you know that you are on Substack, and it is an amazing thing, and they cannot not read it. They must read it every week and look for you every day, and it'll come into their mailbox, and they must subscribe so they don't miss a single item. So there we are, and that's the end of the slideshow. So I'm going to exit. There we are. Oops, did I lose you? You didn't lose me.
I'm still here.
Okay. Where am I though?
Should be able to stop the share.
Okay.
Somewhere in the top.
There we go.
Thank you. That was really, that was quite thorough and really helpful. I did have a couple follow-up questions.
Good.
If you don't mind. The first is that I didn't know that you were kicked off of Twitter. I've been tagging you in all of our promotional tweets.
No, what's very interesting is I can go on and read it. All of my followers have gone away. No, all of the people I follow have gone away. My followers are all still listed, but I can't activate, I can't respond or anything. So if people happen to go on and put on my Twitter my name, I guess they would see stuff that's directed to me. But no. I've taken myself off of everything having to do with Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. So
that's fair. But I am curious to just kind of start there. So you mentioned you already had a pretty big Twitter following when you decided to launch Substack. Was that something conscious that you tried to grow? Did you have an approach to that, or did it kind of happen organically as you were, writing more and posting more?
Oh, it was organic. I mean, I actually started it when I was the editor and publisher of World Policy Journal, and Twitter was very, very young, and I had no idea how to even do it. But there was a young fellow who was an intern of mine one summer. That interns always know more than their old bosses about the latest thing coming along. So he showed me how to do it. He chose my Twitter handle for me, and I began doing it. And it was fun. It was interesting. People began following me. I've always felt very constrained by that 173 whatever it is. How many characters is it now? Limit?
Well, it went up to I think it's 250 now.
Oh, 250. Whoa, that's lavish. But anyway, I used to sit there when it was 175 or whatever it was, and try to figure out how I can abbreviate some words and kind of spare it down. That drove me nuts. So Notes is really nice. I mean, it's really, and the kinds of people who are reading it are not the, obviously, Notes is never going to have the 250 million followers that Taylor Swift has, but neither is my Substack page. So there we are.
Not with that attitude. No, but I'm just kind of curious, because obviously, like you mentioned, Twitter limits your length and Substack doesn't. So was that an adjustment, or it sounds like you were pretty eager to just have that extra space?
Oh no, I love the both, all of that above. I would have done Substack even without that. I had actually tried at one point. What was that other one I was doing before Substack? You paid $5 a month for. Begins with P, but I forget what it was called. It was another thing like that. It came along years before Substack, and it never really took off in the writing community. It became much more of an artistic kind of thing, and I think it's kind of fallen apart right now. But Substack, I think, is growing, and it has grown. It's interesting. They gave a bunch of us who were fairly early, well, not that early, but subscribers. They gave us the right to buy into a stake in Substack. So I have some shares in the company now, which is
Huh.
great. And that is kind of a motivating factor also to stay with it. But
Yeah,
even without that, I just think it's a very exciting vehicle, and it's a way to showcase your most profound thoughts and to really have them pop, because it is so easy to create an interesting looking page on Substack. You don't have to be, I'm no computer, like I'm 78 years old, I'm no computer genius, right? And I can't really do very heavy. I did create this slideshow all by myself today, which I was very proud of, actually. But I don't do that kind of thing very often. And when I was creating my logo, I really did have to have a real graphic designer help me do that. So
logos are hard. They're deceptively tricky.
oh, yeah.
Um, I'm also kind of curious, as you mentioned, creation is crucial, and it's as easy as it is to make the page look good. You got to have the words to put in the boxes that are coming from your own brain. So, at what point did you kind of feel like you had? I guess maybe the question is for someone who's maybe a little earlier in their career, maybe still in kind of the news place, news realm. When did you feel like you can make the jump to maybe more something that's a little bit more, maybe a little bit less hard news, a little bit more editorial in there?
Well, this happened actually sort of generically a long time ago. When I first began writing CNN opinion columns, that was back in 2016, I guess, something like that. Oh no, even before that, I think maybe 2015, 8 or 9 years ago. I was already at World Policy Journal, so I was writing also a monthly, not a monthly, we were quarterly, but a column for every issue of the magazine. And so I really had a chance to really extend myself then, and my name was on it. But when I was with the New York Times, I was at the New York Times for 12 years, and they certainly, New York Times reporters are not supposed to have, opinions, but they are very smart people, all of them, and they do have ideas, and they are able to put events in perspective. So they used to have, and I think they still do, I don't see it that much anymore, a thing called a news analysis, and it had a little bug. It said news analysis on next to it, and so you knew that was the reporter himself, being able to tell you what he thought the events that he was writing about really meant. And they also had, for instance, they had the weekend news of the week in review at the time, Sunday Times. That too it wasn't really an editorial, because the editorials we had a very specific place in the paper and were a whole different staff separate from the news staff. But people who are intelligent and have been covering a field or a region or a subject matter for a long period of time, they do tend to develop a depth of understanding that's very useful to provide interpretation and context. And I think context is very important. That's one of the things I really like to use in Substack. I like to use my knowledge of history. I was a history major at Harvard, and mainly diplomatic history. And I like to think that the best journalists, for instance, are able to look at events and kind of prepare people for what might have happened, what did happen leading up to them, and what the historical context might be for them going forward. And I think that kind of a context is really what makes great journalism.
Mm-hmm. I think I had a professor say something along the lines of context is king. So
That's it. Context is king. Very good. Context and content.
yeah. On a similar vein, what advice do you have, or maybe you can kind of walk through how you did this for your own page, but establishing a tone. I assume you want to keep it fairly consistent, but it's, maybe a little more casual than what you'd write for a publication.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, it depends entirely who you are. For instance, Cy Hirsch is a great friend, Seymour Hirsch. He was the first person who exposed the My Lai massacre during the Vietnam War. He was very big in the Pentagon Papers area, and he's doing a marvelous Substack page right now. So you should subscribe to that.
He's been by on Zoom with the New England chapter as well. So
there you go. That's
there you
it.
go.
But he's great, and he's pretty serious. Cy is not I mean, he can be kind of fun when you're without it, I guess having a drink with you, but doesn't go out for drinks very that often. Most of the time he's been, poring over papers. But other people like myself, I do like to think that if you should set a tone. and you should try to keep that tone fairly uniform all through your piece. But it's kind of like, in a way, it's like writing a book. The hardest part to writing a book is it can take you 2 or 3 years to write the book, which means that the last part of the book you've written 2 years after the first part of the book. And it's going to sound seamless. It's going to sound, because people aren't going to read it over 2 years. They're going to read it over maybe, a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, or, 3 hours if they're just skimming through it. So, you really do have to keep that sense of tone. So I think if you keep that in your head, and you hear that in your head, you will always be able to write in a tone that seems basically honest and same. For Joyce Pernick is Joyce Pernick. She is a comic writer she was with the New York Times for many years, and she has a very amusing Substack page, and she always has something fun and interesting, and so, but you can always hear her tone as soon as you start reading it, you realize that's who it is, right? And that's good.
Mm-hmm. Did that come naturally to you to pick the tone for your own?
I guess. I mean, I don't sit there and say, oh my goodness, I have to fit this tone. No, you just you're writing and it's in your head, and it comes out in your keys. So, yeah.
So you, as you've mentioned a couple of times, you've been an editor
Oh, yeah.
many years as well. So I'm kind of curious if you are thinking as an editor and you were making a hire, would you be excited or wary, or how would you react if a candidate you were looking at, especially maybe someone on the younger side, mentioned that they had like a fairly established Substack page?
Oh, I'd be very excited. First of all, I'd love to read it, and then maybe I'll make up my mind. I mean, not every Substack page is something I think needs to be written by someone who should be at the New York Times, for instance, but some are. But I think you can you can understand a person a lot from the from what they're from what they're writing on a daily basis or a weekly basis. You get a very, very good sense of who they are and how they will react under deadline pressure or what have you. So the other thing I want to say is that I think it's very important to be able to tell a good story. And I think what makes a great journalist, and I'm talking to when I go up to Cambridge to Newton the end of next week, I'm going to be talking to some journalism students at Newton South about journalism and so on. What I'm going to tell them is this: I think the greatest journalists are people who can tell a great story, who can really tell a good story, a really compelling story, and one that either moves people or informs people or what have you. And if you can tell a good story and take the reader by the hand and lead them gently through the story from the beginning to end, so when they come out at the end, they say, oh my, right, I didn't know that. Oh, that's interesting. You can do that in any medium. You can do it in Substack. You can do it for the Woonsocket newspaper. You can do it for NBC or CBS. You can do it for Vanity Fair. It's just a matter of tweaking around the edges. But if you have that sensibility of, what a great news story is, and you can do that, that is more important than anything else. And I think that's what every Substack person should keep in mind, that they're basically telling a good and interesting and compelling story. And that's of vital importance, I think. The final thing is, I also have this thing against unmediated news. And that's the part, I think if there's a single hardest part about Substack, is in doing it on your own. Because I don't have an editor here. When I write my column for CNN, it goes through about 6 different layers of editors. Sometimes it just really drives me nuts because not only that they sometimes they have changes they want to make, which is fine, and usually very often they improve it, but it just takes so much time. And I try to write things that are fairly timely, and by the time sometimes it gets out, it's hours, sometimes days later, and it's like the urgency has gone out of it. So, but on the other hand, I have never had anybody impugn any sense of anything that appeared in CNN. It's always right, and sometimes pretty edgy, frankly. Now, what do I do for Substack? I don't have an editor, but I have my wife. She's a very intelligent woman. She is not a journalist, but I know therefore that she will probably read it as though she were a layperson. She reads every single thing before it goes out on Substack, because I want to have one other pair of eyes on anything I write before it goes out to the world.
So how much cut does she get when you go paid then?
I drive her everywhere. She doesn't like to drive, so
Okay, quick quote then. Maybe to end off, in addition to your own, what other Substack pages would you recommend, especially if someone's maybe, trying to get more of a feel for the platform?
well, all different kinds. I think Peter Osnos has a wonderful one on. Peter Osnos was the founder of Public Affairs Books, and he was a Washington Post journalist for years. In fact, we both competed in covering Pope John Paul's first visit back to Poland as a Polish Pope back around 1978, 79, something like that. And he then became he was Washington Post editor and reporter, and he then founded Public Affairs Books, which was a division of, I believe, Random House. And now he's semi-retired. He writes Substack, among other things. His son Evan Osnos is a great New Yorker writer and journalist. His Substack is very good. Cy Hirsch's is very good. We mentioned that. Jeff Danziger, who's a cartoonist who I love, he has a wonderful Substack page. He puts out usually a cartoon every day, where you see him drawing the cartoon in video, and then it spools over into the actual cartoon that he ends with. He's terrific fun. So what I'm saying is, I think there are all different kinds of Substack pages, and if you just put in Substack into your Google, you'll find interesting things to find. The other thing is that Substack itself, if you just subscribe to Substack, it's free. Just sign up for someone's page, any page, Andelman Unleashed, and you'll be in the network then. And they'll start sending you things like interesting Substack things that are being published this week and that sort of thing. And you'll be able to, of course, do notes then as well. You don't have to pay in order to do notes. So that's pretty good. Unlike what Musk is apparently talking about doing now, which is charging people for the privilege of being X'd.
All right. Well, this has been really great, really informative. Any lasting thoughts before we close out here?
No,
lasting thoughts. Ooh, it's been a long week. Last thoughts. Ending thoughts.
Last thoughts. Let's see. Last thoughts. Subscribe to Andelman Unleashed. That would be a good one. No. Just enjoy your audience and enjoy talking to them, because that's what you'd be doing. You'll be thinking about, when I was at CBS, the first time, a couple of times I stood up in front of a camera, whether I was in Paris or Chad or the newsroom in New York, and I looked at the camera. The first couple of times I did that, I was paralyzed, because I'm saying to myself, 25 million people are going to be watching me tonight. Oh my God. Same thing happened. They decided before I went overseas, they decided they wanted me to get used to being in front of a microphone. So they had me doing CBS radio hourlies. And you walk into that studio and you sit down, you have your script and whatever, you've timed it out very carefully. And a little red light goes on, and the director who's standing there goes like that at you. And you realize you're talking to 475 CBS affiliates from coast to coast and across Canada. You say, oh my God, right? Yeah, but you just stop. And so, but it's a real rush to think about, you can have an audience out there that anybody can read and anybody can react to. And I get all kinds of amazing reactions to it. So enjoy that and love it and embrace it. And it can be really a rush, and it can be tremendously fulfilling, and it can be frustrating. And, you sometimes you just want to pick up your pen and throw it at the screen or whatever, or your keyboard, but you keep going and don't give up, because it's worth not giving up.
That's good. I think that's applicable in kind of all areas there. So, well,
thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
Good. And you know how to reach me, daandelman at gmail.com. So there we are.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Bye.